ladies and gents, we're now approaching our last speaker for the day. And this is going to be presented by Tanya van Zy, who's our Quality Assurance Manager in the NCPC, looking at the skills development that's been undertaken in the group. And I think she's been very instrumental in setting up and getting our biogas training and content up and running and sorted in the center. So she's going to share with us a little bit around the biogas initiatives that NCPC has been involved in and the early successes that we're possibly seeing on this. So this is really stepping out into new territory for us and embracing the whole concept of new renewables and forms of energy. So Tanya, thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to do the same thing as Wendy. Who's still awake? Okay, so I'm the last speaker for this afternoon, and luckily I knew that, so I put a lot of pictures in my presentation, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that. So, like Kevin said, this biogas course is a venture into renewables, the first for the NCPC. And we do plan on venturing even further into renewables. So I'm going to talk about the biogas course, firstly, that was developed for the NCPC. And we also delivered our first round of the biogas training during 2020, 2021. Okay, the content that I'm going to share today is firstly just what does the program look like, what does it include, how many modules, and what we cover. Then I'm going to talk about the company participation that we had in this first round, which was fantastic. The host plants, and then I'm going to dive into some of the elements that we had a look at when we developed our first biogas projects. We did feedstock analysis, plant design, digestate management, environmental and legislative considerations when you have to put up a biogas plant, very important. And then potential funding for biogas projects. What's out there that could potentially help us bring some of these things into fruition? And then I'm going to share one slide on the recommendations we made to our candidate sites. I can't give all the details, but I can give you at least some of the details that what we have done. So firstly, the biogas program. This program was developed for the NCPC. We contracted a company called Resilient Circular, who are it's a South African company. They operate within South Africa, and they have been in this biogas industry for quite a while. They also involved with SABIA, the South African Biogas Industry Association. So we brought all those stakeholders together, and Resilient Circular in the end developed the course for us. The structure of the course is exactly the same as our other courses. In each discipline, we do have an end user course, which is a kind of a fundamentals and how to just get started on biogas, followed by an expert course which gets much more involved and has a practical requirement and a practical project to it as well. So the end user course is usually 2 days when we deliver it face-to-face, and 4 days if we deliver it online, 4 half days. So we spend the mornings online then. And then the expert course has about 4 modules. With this first round, I think we spent about 10 months part-time doing these 4 modules. The first module is the theoretical classroom-based type of training that we do for 4 days, 4 full days. Module 2 That's where the fun starts. We actually visit operating biogas plants to see how they operate. What are the things that bug them? You know, what's the maintenance that needs to be done? What are the operational issues that they run into? And in the third module, that is now where the rubber meets the road, and the candidates need to develop a biogas project at a candidate site that the NCPC has brought to the party. The final module is something that we haven't done in any of our courses. This is the Shark Tank module, where once we've developed this, this project, we actually have to propose it to some financial institutions for them to shoot some holes in it and to tell us whether they would invest in it or not. So we had some financial institutions and also some biogas experts that shot some holes in our projects. No pressure. So, company participation. We were so grateful for companies that participated. These were our two candidate companies. Firstly, it was ZZ2 Tomatoes, and they have quite a few sites, anything from farming operations to warehouses and packaging, and then distribution as well. So there could be a number of places where you could plonk down a biogas plant, and we actually had a look at 3 of their facilities to see whether it would be viable. We also had Into Food coming on board. I think this was the Gauteng plant in close to the airport. For today, I'm going to focus on ZZ2 Tomatoes as a case study. Okay. So firstly, in terms of ZZ2, we had a look at the ZZ Fresh Packhouse close to Lanseria Airport. This is one of probably their biggest packhouse, distributing the tomatoes within Gauteng. So from their farming operations, which is in Moketsi, very close to Rietpol, the tomatoes gets transported by truck down to Lanseria, to the ZZ Fresh Packhouse, and then distributed from there. They also have the Natuurboerdery site, which is in fact their own composting facility that they have in Moketsi, close to the farming operations. They do have a lot of organic material waste at that site as well, and we had a look at that as well. So the other option was the ZZ2 Packhouse at Rietpol, which was also up close to the farming area. So that was a big one as well. So those were our candidate sites, and those were the ones we focused on in terms of developing projects. I just want to mention our 2 host sites, the operating biogas facilities that we actually visited as well, and who were really open and telling us about how to operate a plant and what are the bugbears when you have such a plant. Oops. So we had, firstly, the Morgan Abattoir in Springs. Some of you may know, I don't see Mark here, but the abattoirs have condemned material that they have to get rid of. And having a biogas plant is one of those more circular economy type of solutions for this problem. So the Morgan Abattoir is currently operating their biogas plant very successfully. And it was in a very good state. And who you see there, that's the team. And I see some of them in the room. That's the candidates that attended the training course. And suffice to say, all of us actually passed this course, which is a first for the NCPC as well. So the second plant was Bio2Watt, who very kindly also took us through their plant at a stage where they weren't even operating at full capacity because they had ruptured one of their domes. And so they were very open in telling us some of the issues that they had in operating their plant. And they were also very interested in the training because there's not a lot of skills available in the country in this technology. So it's definitely something that the NCPC hopes to expand in the future. So now diving into the actual project development. Firstly, we do a feedstock analysis. So our group went out to site, we went out to Moketsi, and we gathered samples, firstly of the tomato waste material, and also of the actual plants. The tomato plant could also be a potential waste material that could be used. And down at the ZZ Fresh site, they were also growing, in the farmlands around, they were growing some other vegetables, onions and so on. The waste of which we could also use for a potential biogas plant. Now, all these plant materials don't contain a lot of fats and things, and therefore doesn't have a high energy content or much energy that can be used. And therefore, it's sometimes good to include some animal manure as a feedstock to a biogas plant. In this case, we went around looking for some chicken farms, specifically egg-laying type of farms, and we found one close to the Moketsi area, and we collected some samples from them as well, sent all of this to a laboratory for them to test the BMP, biomethane potential, of these feedstocks. We also did a fairly in-depth study of their energy consumption. Luckily, they had lots of information over the course of 3 years, so it was very nice to see that. So we understood exactly how their energy bills worked, how much their energy costs increased, and we also knew the availability of the waste that might be seasonal. So especially if we talk about the veggies and so on, that might be seasonal. And so we gathered all of that information, and we did a plant design, plant pre-feasibility study, but we also got technology suppliers of biogas plants involved, and we got quotations for the amount and type of waste that we have available. So we got a plant design from a company called Global Energies, and their quote was actually the cheapest of all of the ones we got. And it's actually quite simple. They really went down to, just supplying what is absolutely needed and not over-designing anything. So they also did the design for us. And then one of the bugbears in biogas specifically is digestate design. From your biogas plant, there is still some waste coming off of that. It has a solid and a liquid fraction, and you can separate that. However, you can also keep it together and dispose of it in some way or form. So when you develop a biogas plant, digestate management is one of the things that can either make or sink your project, because it could cost you a lot of money to get rid of this waste material. So we had to have a look at that for our sites that we were investigating. And because we were talking to ZZ2, obviously they would have use for a type of a fertilizer. So in all of the sites, we found uses for the digestate, that they could potentially use it at ZZ Fresh, for instance. It could be sprayed on the nearby farms for the veggies specifically. or be used in the composting facility for growing, composting for growing hydroponic plants. And at Rietpool, it could be distributed in the area for the farms in 100-liter flow bins, which is already used on the farms to distribute other things. We also had to have a look at the environmental and legislative aspects. Firstly, the compliance with all the relevant NEMA regulations, and this is not exhaustive, but I just want to highlight 3 of them. Firstly, the Air Quality Act, and then also the Water Act and Water Use Licensing, and also the Waste Management Act. And we also had a look at determining whether a basic assessment or a full environmental impact assessment, that's the wrong way around, it should be EIA, is required. And then carbon tax. You could reduce your liability for carbon tax by implementing such a project, and the carbon impact that this project would have when implemented. If you decide to generate electricity on your site, you also have to register with NERSA. So we looked into that as well. And obviously, from site to site, there's certain bylaws that apply as well. We also had a look at the funding for the projects, what kind of government grants and things are available for this. And we heard about funding called the Critical Infrastructure Program, which is currently still running, and we heard about some other projects that successfully applied for that. So that is definitely something, and there's a lot of rules behind it and so on, but we looked at that as well. And then there's also some of the tax deductions that come into play and may actually make your project even more viable. Section 12B, which is your writing off your asset even quicker. I think you can write off about 100% of your assets within the first year under Section 12B. Section 12N, which says that even if you lease the facility that you are currently on, you can still write off within the first year, 100%. And then Section 12U, which talks about if you need to install infrastructure around your plant, fences, roads, etc., which is also included there, certain deductions that you can do. Then we looked at how to structure such a project, because there's various different ways with specific benefits behind them. You could look at something that is very often used, a special purpose vehicle, where you create a new company that owns this asset and then just sells the energy, but also has basically to buy the raw materials. You could also look at an engineering, procurement, and construction contract, basically a turnkey solution. You could look at splitting the contract into different parts, or you could look at build, own, operate, and maybe transfer, which was the one that we preferred in the end. So this is my last slide. It just talks about the recommendations we made to ZZ2. So the sites that we had, the projects weren't viable at that stage. Firstly, ZZ Fresh, the one at Lanseria, was a very good site. However, it was difficult to quantify exactly how much value would be in the fertilizer because we don't know the composition of the fertilizer. We couldn't really quantify exactly how much value would be in that. There's also a lot of heat coming off of this type of project, and that could be potentially used in ZZ Fresh. It could be used to heat some of the houses around, the greenhouses around the facility could be used during winter. However, what do you do with the heat in summer? So it would have very good influence on reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and you would then have a portion of at least sustainably sourced electricity. So in 2021, the projects didn't make a lot of sense just yet. However, if their electricity prices increased by 10% or 14%, 10% for Ritol and 14% for ZZ Fresh, these projects would actually be washing their own faces and would be neutral at least. So I believe even during 2022, they would start making sense to actually implement these projects. And they would have a good, it's good circular economy principles that you're applying here, because you're using your waste, generating more energy from those renewables. And you also have the benefits of being a sustainable organization. So there's a lot of other benefits that's perhaps difficult to quantify. Thank you.